Have you ever looked at a math problem and thought, what does this letter mean? Why do we use letters in the first place? This is really confusing. So, in math, variable, as it says here, is a letter that represents a number. These letters can be things like X, Y, Z, any letter you want. You can use an a B, a C, whatever you want to use, but usually the most common are these three, typically an X. It's called a variable because a variable means a letter that represents a number, but a variable means it's variable, as in the number can change, but we still want to keep the letter the same because we want to know maybe what does it do to the equation when we change it to 2, or what happens when we change it to a 3. It's variable in what value it can be at a certain time, depending on what we want to do with it. So when we see a letter or variable like X, Y, or Z, it's not a random number, it's a letter that stands in for a number we want to choose in the future or we don't know yet. It's like a placeholder, basically. And also, common interpretation of a variable is that X means multiply. These are not the same, hence why sometimes you want to draw this. This can mean multiply because it has the straight X format, but as a variable, you want to use like a curve to indicate that this is actually a variable and that these are not equal. So let's go into a couple things that we can do to make this more easily understood. Let's look at an example. So pretend that we want to buy popcorn, right? The popcorn we know $5 each like container, it has popcorn, whatever. This is $5 each of these. So let's use a variable here. So here we can use X. X represents the number of popcorns that we want to buy. Since it's $5 each, the total cost is going to equal $5. Let's redo that so it's a little neater. $5 times our variable, which is X. So X is how many we want to buy, so we would multiply that by the cost of each, because think about it. If we want to buy one popcorn, we're basically multiplying one popcorn times the cost, which is $5. The basic, generally, when we want to find the total amount of money, we're gonna number of popcorns times how much each one costs, So instead of using number of popcorns and writing this whole thing out, we're gonna just label X equals number of popcorns we want to buy and label X times the cost of each, which is $5, which brings us to the total. So here, basically what we just wrote here, right? So if we want to do 2 popcorns, for example, this would be 5 times 2 popcorns, right? And that bring us to $10. But we can also use this equation that we just made. It's 5 times x. X is, as you can see here, the number of popcorns that we want to buy. So if we want to buy 2 popcorns, we just sub the 2 in. And then it brings us back to the $10 that we just got there. That makes it very simple because say we want to do a very large number, like we can do it this way, yeah, but we can also do it in this way using the equation that we just made. So we have, maybe we want 10 popcorns instead, right? So using the total equals $5 each times x, which is the number of popcorns we want to buy, right? The number of popcorns, let's move this over. Number of popcorns we want to buy, right? So this would be equals $5 each, right? Times 10 popcorns. So that brings us to $50. It's kind of, in other words, like it's kind of very interesting because we can change the variable x, but we can still get the total that we want. So we can do if x is the number of popcorns, we can always change this number, which is what we subbed in for x, and get our total still. So we can also use variables and expressions. Say for example, we have x plus 3 equals 7. We're using x because we want to figure out what is x plus 3. What number plus 3 gives us 7, right? So we can use x as a variable to solve for as a placeholder for the unknown. So here we have x plus 3 equals 7. So what could possibly be x? Well, for this question, x equals 4, because 4 plus 3 gives us 7. Now if we do x plus 5 equals 10, what could be x? Well, what plus 5 gives you 10? 5. So these can be very simple or these can be very complicated depending on what these things mean. So let's not get it complicated. And also, some students may think that, oh, because we found out that x equals 4, here x always means 4. This is not true because clearly here in our equation to the right, x is equal to 5, but this one x is equal to 4. So as I said before, it's a variable. It's a variable, which means our number changes, it's variable, it'll change. So in here it could be 4, here it could be 5, another question it could be 20, one question it could be a million. We don't know. So let's review. A variable, what is that? It's a letter that represents a number and it's variable, which means this number changes, right? We can use variables to help us understand math more easily and simple, especially if we don't know what number we want to use or if the number changes. So as we said before in the beginning, we used it for solving questions. If we used it for like the number of, we could use it in total. We can use it in total cost questions, especially when we're dealing with money. When we multiply how many of whatever we have, we have, and then we multiplied it. Let's not use x's again, right? And we multiplied times the cost, whatever the cost was. And then 2, as I showed you before, we can use it in finding an unknown. If that helped you, make sure to like and subscribe.